5 minutes, and all I have to do is drink coffee. So I'm kind of going to miss the bastard this morning.
Yeah.
I think I might even mention that.
All right. Let me know. You want me to start it?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thanks for coming back to the Sultans Swap. I'm Brian Johnson, and you know that guy over there, Edwin Anderson. If you haven't checked out our previous video, it's kind of an introduction, gives you an idea of who we are and what we're talking about. If you've seen that first video, you'll notice we're absent one, John Anthony, the owner of Sports Card Investor. I will give him his plug, I'm sure, a few times a day, but not right now. So it's just me and you, Edwin. You ready to go, man?
Yeah, sounds great. I definitely want to give a shout out. We got, after our first week live on air, we got 300 followers on Twitter. So a big shout out to all of our Twitter fans out there, looking to connect with you guys continuously.
Yeah, and 100 likes on Facebook. And I know these aren't, I don't think, Justin Bieber numbers quite yet. But I did mention in the first broadcast, whatever you want to call it, that you guys were going to play a critical role in this show, if you even want to call it a show. But the critical role is you guys sending us in questions. So I really appreciate all the questions that you send over, the good back and forth in the group. We certainly don't pretend to know everything. And I saw some really good back and forth about one of the topics we're going to start out with, which is scamming. Now, I'm not sure how much Edwin wants to go into his background. I know about how much I want to go into mine, but I'm pretty confident between the two of us, we could probably talk about scammers and what's going on all day long. So the first question, it depends on where we're talking about being scammed. I think I tend to think of it most about Facebook. Would you agree, Edwin?
Yeah, I kind of lump all the online social media sites. That's one of the things that have really just taken off lately, especially, given people are looking for creative new ways to kind of beat the fees on eBay and some of these other auction sites and whatnot. But, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I mean, people are trading on PhotoBucket. It's crazy. So, I kind of lump all of the Facebook kind of into social media as a whole. But, where there's money, there's scammers. And, it used to just be Craigslist and eBay, but, I think once you move away from the protections of eBay and you go into the social networking sites, it becomes a little bit more of the Wild West. And I think that's where a lot of our fans have kind of expressed their concern and interest in trying to figure out, how can I protect myself, or how can I not be scammed, or what are some things to look for? So
well, let's establish right away that getting scammed in anything isn't 100% avoidable. I've been on Facebook for 2 years trading baseball cards back and forth. And literally out of the thousands of trades I've made, I've been scammed twice. And in both instances, when I went back and put all the information together, I was like, yeah, no kidding, man. Like, where was my radar on this? I should have totally known. So let's first talk about eBay, because I think that's an easy one. It's not that you can't scam someone on eBay. It's that eBay offers you protection. I mean, I think it's pretty well known that if you buy something off of eBay and you don't receive your item, or your item's damaged, eBay is going to back you.
Yeah, I think eBay, I think most of our fans would probably agree that they do a lot of business with eBay, and that's probably where we missed John's discussion this week as well. But, eBay is a buyer's market, it seems, and they offer a lot of protections for buyers. And then couple that with PayPal, I think it's a win-win for most situations. But as you mentioned, I mean, nothing's foolproof. So, some of the types of things that I look for when I'm investigating something I'm getting ready to drop some money on. I mean, if it's a couple dollars here and there, I'm probably a little bit looser on what I do. But I mean, you definitely want to go and read the feedback. I mean, all the common stuff. Look at the seller, read the listing, look for the fine print. One of the things that I'll tell you lately, we've been seeing a lot of, and especially in the PSA or the graded card groups, is the good old bait and switch. Where folks are putting up stock images, of a particular card, or taking somebody else's card. I have enough protections in place where even if somebody does scam me and I do my due diligence, that I'm still going to get my money back. It may take a little bit, but I'm going to get that money back.
Right. I was going to say we could probably start at square one. Actually, I think that bait and switch you're talking about, that might have been a C3PO card, if I remember correctly. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah. Well, we
Because he
just
got
had
bait and
one.
switched on that.
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple even just this week. I mean, they're actually popping up, with the sports cards. I mean, left and right.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. It's just I think that's been an age old problem, but that's why eBay offers their money back guarantee, where if an item is not as described, then they're willing to give their money, the money back to the buyer. So, but it's sometimes that's difficult to prove as well. Because the buyer says, "Oh well, I sent that card," but the seller says, "I sent that card," but the buyer says, "No, no, he didn't." And then the seller says, "Well, you must have swapped it out on your end."
Right. Right. Well, I think eBay is pretty well covered. Again, I think most people are pretty familiar with that. So we can kind of take it to the Facebook angle. And Facebook is more, you use the word wild, wild west. It really is the wild, wild west, man. You have to trust the people that you're making deals with. And I think people's natural inclination in reality is to trust people. Like, we do want to have faith in humanity. And I don't want to get all philosophical and give my dissertation on the duality of man. But what I will do is say that I know there are guys that I trade with all the time where the first thing I do, man, is I check out their page. Yeah. And it might sound really bad to say this, but if someone has a flat brimmed hat or a car from the Fast and the Furious, I'm less likely to be as excited about making that trade as I am with someone who doesn't have those things. And that might sound wrong to say, I know that, but that's just like inherently, that's my first feeling is like, I don't know, man, that just doesn't seem right.
But that's no different from what we would do on eBay either. You're going to look at the seller. You're going to see if they have feedback. You're going to kind of do your same normal due diligence. So I think that concept holds true, and it's proven. I mean, it's proven that it works. So if it doesn't smell right from the beginning, trust your gut. Has always been a good thing. I don't know about you, but when I first got onto Facebook and realized that, oh my God, I can buy and sell cards here. It just opened up my eyes. Scared the shit out of me too, as far as, trading with somebody. You mean I'm going to just put my cards in the mail and that person's going to put their cards in the mail and we're going to hope that, both people do exactly what they say they're going to do.
Right.
I think getting from that initial, trade, kind of fear factor to, figuring out what are the tools that I can kind of reduce my risk, was the kind of turning point for me. And so, as you mentioned, I mean, researching the actual seller or the other trader is critical. And I'll be honest with you, beyond just kind of sleuthing their page and looking at, is this a real profile or, whatever the case may be.
Right.
There are some great tools out there. There are some good feedback groups that I use a lot of, and try to look for feedback on that particular person, because that's one of the things I think that a lot of the members on these even on Twitter and Facebook, they've realized that feedback is very important, in helping build a reputation, and checking with people that we may have of common interest, or centralized feedback sites.
There are times where I'll message a friend and say, hey, did you ever hear this guy? And they'll say, oh, he's awesome. And because I have so much trust in those guys, I'm like, totally not worried about it. Like, sure. I know they're going to come through. A couple things on what you just said there that had my wheels turning is I was having a chat this morning for a potential trade. And I looked, and our original conversation was one of the first trades that I ever made. And the fear that I had was evident in what I wrote. I'm like, so how does this work now? Like, you just send it to me and I just send it to you, and that's all good. So I thought that was pretty funny. The one that I did want to talk about a little bit also off of what you said was the Facebook groups that are particular for feedback. I find that those can be good and bad.
Absolutely.
Like, there's a lot of times where the information is very accurate and you can get back some good information, but then there's also times where it's just hate fest. And what I mean by that is that it's not a person who's a scammer. It's just someone that they don't like. Yeah. And that leads into what is negative feedback. So if you're listening to this and you're checking out a feedback group, find a legitimate feedback group, not just one where it's like, hey, this guy's a-hole and there's no other real information. Edwin and I both admin on I think a couple pages together. And the one thing that we're very careful about doing is getting both sides of the story. So just because someone messages me and says, "Hey, this guy ripped me off," I don't automatically take them at their word. We're
Right.
very careful to go through and see what the other person has to say.
Yeah, because somebody's version of being ripped off can vary. I mean, ripping off could be, hey, I didn't get the card the next day, all the way to, hey, this person didn't package well, to a legitimate all-out scam. And I think it's like anything else. It just paints a small picture. You have to look at the bigger picture. Feedback is just one of the many tools that you can use, and I think it's a great tool to use for sure. But as you mentioned, word of mouth referrals from people that you trust go a long way. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to take, information. For instance, if I ask you, Brian, I say, hey, how is this person on a trade? Oh, he's a great guy. I'm going to take that. I'm actually probably going to hold that in higher regard than, somebody else's feedback that I don't even know.
Right. And I've seen those Facebook pages help people in making their deals as well, because they might not necessarily get blasted. Like you mentioned, poor packaging. There's been a few guys that, just pretty much threw a card into a bubble mailer and sent it. And, people go on the feedback group and say like, hey, this guy sent me this package. It wasn't secure. The card fell out, whatever the case may be. Plastic bags even, or grocery store bags. Like, I don't want my card in that.
I got a toilet paper story. One time I got a card from eBay, literally a card. It was in a plain white envelope with a single ply around it. So, I mean, I've seen it shipped all different ways. That's for sure.
Sure. But those people have improved and since have made it better and are doing the right thing. So there is definitely a benefit to those pages.
Yep.
So far we got, hey, you do have to have a little bit of trust on Facebook. There's no doubt about that. But there are tools out there to make it happen. You guys on the page had mentioned a few things that we talked about here right now, and I really appreciate that. The biggest one is the too good to be true. But more than that, Edwin mentioned like stock photos, making sure that it's not just ripped off at eBay. Coining is probably a term that you've heard of. When I first got on Facebook, I would see people say, coin this card, coin that. I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. But they actually don't want to coin. The best way to do it is to have your name and date on a piece of paper beside the card. Now, here's the thing. I'm not recommending you do that if you're trading, 1986 tops traded Barry Bonds for, a Don Mattingly rookie. I mean, if you really want to be a jerk about it, I guess you could. But for any deals that I make where it's, a substantial amount of money to me, I'll say, hey, can you group those cards together and take a pic?
Right.
And that's kind of a nice way to say it. Instead of saying, hey, coin that crap, I don't believe you. I just say, hey, I'm going to post this as incoming. Could you gather all the cards together and take a pic for me? Or if it's just a single card and it's enough money and I don't know the person, sometimes I will ask them to coin the card with that name and date.
Yeah, it's all about proof of ownership. I mean, you want to make sure the other person has it in their hand. Now, I'm going to give her, I think most of the folks that know me know I'm a computer geek, so I like to use the tools at hand. And one of the tools that I use a lot of is called the Google reverse image search. So you can actually take a picture, and when you go to Google Images and you bring up Google Images, the search page, there's a little photo icon in the right-hand corner of the search bar, and if you actually click on that, you can actually upload a photo or put a URL to a photo, and Google will take that photo, search all of their indexes and say, oh, I found another photo that looks just like it here. And if it's a unique enough photo, like, sometimes we've found scammers like this before, where they've, hit on some old eBay transaction or another group or something on the web where somebody stole it from, then, you can kind of use that to paint the other side of the picture as well.
That's great, man. You know so many things online that I don't do the reverse search. I just kind of go to Google and put it up. But you're gonna have to show me that one. I do want to real quick thank Scott Hubbard and Robbie Huchin and Rob Greenberg and Dean Rains and Brian Backey for getting on that chat on our Facebook page, the Sultans of Swap, and having a good back and forth. I really hope that we hit on the points that you guys wanted to see, but honestly, Edwin, I don't have too much more to say about scamming.
Yeah.
Other
Well, I
than
got one more item that I'd like to bring up, and this is pretty common. Is scammers seem to be seasonal at times, and so when somebody's being inducted into a Hall of Fame, passes away, there's a major sporting event, you know, those scammers try to take advantage of people kind of buying, based on emotion.
sure.
So, sometimes you'll actually see a larger spike in scams, surrounding those events. And even some of the Facebook groups, when somebody passes, they'll say, "Hey, we don't want to buy, sell, or trade cards of that person, for a couple weeks or whatever the case may be." Part of it is out of respect, obviously, but the other part is, that's when the scammers come out and they try to take advantage of it. So, it's just one of those things too. Don't buy based on emotion. Buy based on, even if you want something emotionally, do your homework, do your research, and make sure that if you're buying on Facebook, that you do goods and services, so you protect yourself as well, with PayPal. So that's a big important one that I really want to stress for folks is PayPal goods and services is your friend.
I appreciate you bringing that up because a lot of times I'll get people that message me and say, "Hey, why can't I trade Yogi Berra, who recently passed?" And the answer that I give is not the one that I would actually want to say. What I want to say is because of scammers.
Yeah.
And that's the real reason to me that some pages don't allow it, and some do because it is a good opportunity to sell. And as you're talking about, though, it's popular culture, so that's when the scammers typically come out, is when it revolves around popular culture. So we are going to move on to eBay values, market value for cards. What's this worth? What's this worth are very popular segments on this type of channel. There's all kinds of shows that revolve around it, and it's what people want to know. Like, what's my stuff worth, and what can I get for it? And I shouldn't have just said eBay. I think I always say eBay because that's where I get my value from. So, what are some other places to get your value from, Edwin?
Okay.
Go ahead, man, because I'll tell you, I use eBay value for everything.
Yeah, I think with eBay being one of the larger card markets out there, a lot of people go by their sold listings. And keep in mind, I said sold listings. We got some new traders that will go out there on eBay and they'll do a search and say, how much is this worth? And they find, hey, a buy it now price or, best offer price or whatever the case may be. And they think, oh, that's what my card's worth. Well, I think everybody's going to say your card's worth what people are paying for it or willing to pay for it. So therefore, they look at the sold or the completed listings, basically to determine what people are paying for that, and then help, kind of average those together, or look at the comps, in association with that. But, beyond eBay, there are, different subscriptions out there that you can purchase, and there's some free stuff out there. You have, Beckett, I think, which, most card collectors, have heard the Beckett name before.
Right.
A lot of card shops use them. It's a publication that they put out, using a proprietary formula to determine, what a card value is worth, and they sample markets. And, I'm sure eBay is somewhere in that equation, but they also are looking at trade shows. And if you read, the inside cover of Beckett, they'll kind of loosely tell you, what they're doing, but they're not going to give you the proprietary formula of, this is how I come up with this price. But generally, I think what we hear a lot of, and I think even in our prior discussions, we've talked about this, folks tend to think that, Beckett prices are so high. Beckett's so high, I can't go buy Beckett. And, Beckett is just a publisher that samples markets and produces a price guide, for folks to have. But Beckett's one of them. PSA SMR is another one, if you're looking at graded cards. There's a great site out there called Vintage Card Prices, where it's a subscription where they do the same thing. They sample the sold markets, and then they give you like a listing of, hey, this is where the stuff sold for, that you can use. You got Tough Stuff, you got all these different online publications. But for me, I think what I do is I do my own sampling of the markets. I kind of see what stuff's going for on Facebook, because I'm connected to that market a lot. So I see what things are selling for, they're razzing for, whatever the case may be. Obviously, eBay is a free one, and then I have Beckett, and I basically take all of those and I look at them and I determine what I feel it's worth, from those values.
Here's the problem with all of them, and when I say problem, it's not so much a problem as that it just like these are the differences. It depends. Some of it depends on where you are, because a Bob Gibson or a Lou Brock is worth more in St. Louis than it is in Denver. That's just how it is. So if I'm at St. Louis and I'm at a show, I can expect to pay more there than I would somewhere else. The same thing holds true where I live in Maryland. Brooks Robinson, Cal Ripken Jr., forget about it, man. If I want a Brooks Robinson or a Cal Ripken Jr., I want to buy that from someone in Texas who has no emotional connection to those players whatsoever, because the value to them is not going to be worth near as much as it is to the person in those other cities. And it doesn't matter if it's eBay, if it's Beckett, no matter what it is, they're not going to be able to capture the buyers in that way. Mm-hmm. I guess I always made the argument that, that's why New York Yankees and Los Angeles Dodgers cost more. They just do, because more people want to buy them. So they're going to have naturally a higher value than other teams. I said at the very beginning, I use eBay for everything. The reason I use eBay for everything is because, to my knowledge, that's the most popular market. You already hit on those key points. It's a cumulative, overall, real-time market value for what your cards are. I could spend as much time as you want crapping on Beckett, man. I could do it all day long. I'm just not a huge fan. I've said it on Facebook pages and other forums. When I go to a card show and I see a person whip out a Beckett, when I ask for a price, I run away from the table, because I already know that it's not going to end well. When I go to a card show, I have my iPhone 6 and, brag alert, and I get it out and I sit there and I go through and I ask people what they want for the cards. And the thing is, most sellers, they know exactly what I'm doing. And as soon as they see me get my phone out, man, they say, "We'll make an offer." Because, they're gauging it too. Like, what kind of buyer am I dealing with? Who am I going for? And I have to say that most dealers are way more familiar now with those kind of because they're doing them too.
Well, and I think you got a good point there. I mean, you're looking at more near-time or real-time information, and to gauge what this card's going for. And eBay shows the trends a lot better than Beckett does. I mean, Beckett is stale by the time you get it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so I think that's a great point. But I think there's a tool for every job type of thing. And what I see a lot on Facebook is folks using Beckett value for trading.
That's fine.
It's a centralized source where we can say, hey, I want to trade my Cal Ripken Jr. rookie card for your rookie card. How much are you looking for? Well, let's go by Beckett value. So Beckett value says, hey, it's worth $25 near mint or whatever the case may be. Well, this is what I'm looking for in trade value. So if you can find a card that's near that in Beckett, then it seems fair, on that level.
Sure.
I think a lot of folks use Beckett value for trading, for that purpose there. So I think, I think there's a time and place for every tool, but I'm with you. I want definitely a more real or near time pricing guide. And, right now there's a void in that market. And I think, luckily for us, we have the eBay solds. The other thing is too, there are some cool tools out there, some sites that you can actually plug item numbers into and look at what the best offer was. They actually track that stuff, and I use that too to factor in what people are paying for things as well. But the one thing I want to throw out about eBay, and it's not so much a counterpoint, but it's just a disclaimer. I think we all go on eBay for the same thing, looking for that deal or looking to fill that void. So you got to imagine that people did get some deals on eBay. I know I've gotten some great deals on eBay before, and I'm like, how, why did that? I'm so happy that person accepted my offer, But I'll give you an example. I bought an autographed baseball, about a week ago, and let's say that baseball was about $100, right? I'm just throwing out an example. This week, I saw the same ball, same everything. I made an offer for half the price, and the person accepted it.
Sure.
So now, let's say those were the only two solds on eBay, and you're looking at them, and you're going, "What do I do?" So in that situation, you got one for $100 and you got one for $50. Do you just say, "Well, it's got to be somewhere in the middle," or do you look at comps? And so that's why I want to pick your brain. When you're looking at the eBay solds, especially, what we see a lot on Facebook are, the of 25s, the of 50s, the one of ones, and I think folks are looking at those cards going, how do I get my value on, or how do I determine what those cards are worth?
Sure. This one is actually, I think that's a softball. And the reason that I say that it's a softball is because I do so much trading based on eBay values. What'll happen is a guy will show me comps of a card, and it'll be the example like you gave. One is 100 and one is 50. So what I do for those lower numbered cards is I will just search like the brand of the card. So 2015 Topps Tribute 101. By putting in that, I get a much larger range of what I'm looking for. So now this is going to include every one of one that is sold on eBay. And you can kind of tier system the players, right? So you know that Mariano Rivera, Derek Jeter, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, Mike Trout is going to end up on the top of that list. And on the bottom of the list, what are you going to find on the bottom? You're going to find, Matt Barnes and, Corchino is going to be on. No offense to those players, they're major leaguers. I respect them, but they don't have as big a market as Willie Mays and Hank Aaron. Sure. So it depends on what player you're talking about. If you're talking about Cal Ripken Jr., I think it's fair to assess that it's probably not going to be as high as Jeter, but it's going to be more than Edgar Martinez. So I'll take it and I'll kind of put them in that middle range. Printing plates, when they first came out, the one-on-ones, everyone was like, how do I price these things? Well, what's happened with printing plates over time? They have gone way, way, way down in price. The one-on-one market is really diluted. So now you're picking up printing plates for between 10 and 20 bucks. But if I have a printing plate of Derek Jeter, I know that I'm probably going to get between $60 and $100, depending on the card or what it is. People have a hard time in a trade accepting that there's a range. Like there's a range value. And a lot of the questions that I've been answering for people lately, when they call and ask me for a value, I give them a range. Like I never say your card is worth this. I say your card is between $60 and $80. Now, depending on who you're talking, like I'm comfortable with that. Like depending on who I'm going to trade for. So if you tell me something is worth between $60 and $80 and it is one of those top tier players I mentioned, I'm going to give you the higher side of that range. And if it's someone that's not as popular, I'm going to give you the lower end of that range. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I always look at it like this when I'm doing my side of the things. Are they a Hall of Famer? Are they a future Hall of Famer? Are they a star? Or are they a common? And I kind of group, by those particular ranges. And if I don't know who the person is and I'm trying to help somebody out, sometimes you got to go to Baseball Reference and look at some stats and really just do some background on them. But it's all about comps too, and I think a lot of these rare cards, you got to find something that's a comp, sometimes that will help you, kind of toss a bone. So for instance, if I'm looking for that Cal Ripken Jr. printing plate, I may say, okay, it's a printing plate. It's got a sticker auto on it. Obviously it's one of one. So let me see what some other product sticker autos from the same, era are going for. So, I may say, okay, this is a Leaf 2014 Ironman edition one, but I can't find any other ones because it's rare or whatever the case may be. Let me go see what a Top Supreme one is going for, or, whatever various different cards. So I think sometimes it's also about looking for comps, and comps will kind of get you in the right ballpark too if you're not so good with determining some of the other factors that you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, man. You're never going to get consensus, or very rarely. The people that I trade with that are the best. I mean, we just trade cards we like. Mm-hmm. I talked to you a little bit about that before. Like I have my list of people who I know collect a player. And if I got it from a break, or if I got it from, some other way than like just buying singles, I'll reach out to those people and say, hey, are you interested? Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. And, it's really easy to just say, you know, they know I'm a Pirate fan, so they'll be like, I have some McCutcheons, and he'll send me some McCutcheons, and I'll send them, you know, whatever I got from the break. And I don't think either of us even considered what the value is on something. I don't think, or I don't believe most people work that way, which is why the question is valid on like how you determine ranges. But again, man, those are I mean, for me, trading cards, that's what I like to do the most. Is just trade with guys who like players and who like teams. When you start getting up to the higher values, I totally get it. But God, I'm not getting a Beckett out, man. It's just not going to happen. I can't do it. I hear what you're saying, but no, like I just can't do it.
Yeah, you know, people ask me sometimes, you know, about inventorying cards, and I think we can probably keep that for another segment because we can talk about that all day. But I keep a spreadsheet on things I'm selling, and you know, I have columns for everything. So I have, I'm kind of like a little nerd about that stuff. You know, I have a Beckett value column. I have an eBay sold column, and in the comments on my Google spreadsheet, I'll throw in links to those items because 6 months from now, there may not be one on eBay, and I have to go back to that. But the variance, between the Beckett value and eBay sold, I mean, it's pretty drastic. So, I can understand.
Substantial.
Yeah.
Which is why. So I want to move on to Wayne Holtzclaw, who writes, "Oh, great Sultans of Swap. I participate in many of the sports card investor breaks. While I prefer the pick your team format, I also jump in on randoms. The randoms force me to take teams I wouldn't normally take and has provided me more than a few cards for my personal collection. However, I also end up with cards that I may have no interest in. That being said, what is the best way to sell these cards? I have an awesome 1 out of 5 2015 Bowman Chrome Traced Lore for the Oakland A's. What is the best way to sell this card and where? I mean, it's a rare card for sure, just not a highly sought after player. Thanks for your advice." So you want to tackle that one first, Edwin?
Yeah, we may have some fans that aren't familiar with breaks, but I kind of tend to be on the same side here with Wayne. I prefer the pick to your team. I'm an Orioles collector. I like Cal Ripken. I like the Orioles, so I try to go after breaks where I can just get Orioles. But if you enter a random team break, you have the option of getting placed for any team. It completely randomizes it. So I may be an Orioles collector, but then, today in the break, I'm getting all the Mets cards, that are in there.
Right.
So, what do you do with those cards? Or, even for the folks that are breaking the retail product, the hobby product, it's the same thing. You're going after a certain, player or collection of cards, but then, what happens with those cards that you don't want? So, for me, and I'll just answer this from a personal perspective, I think what I try to do, and I'll be honest with you, I don't sell a lot. I like to buy.
I know you don't sell a lot.
I'm like a card hoarder. I don't like to get rid of anything. But, nonetheless, when I do decide to get rid of things, I tend to try to use the free markets first. And, I mean, it's going to save me fees, on eBay. And I think we hear it a lot on Facebook, the fee bay, but, I'll do the Facebook, I'll do the Twitter, the Facebook groups first. And, usually you can tend to, get a natural amount of sales or interest, through just posting some things up, for sale. Now, one of the things about the Facebook and the Twitter and the other items are you definitely, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. So, there's some folks that will say, hey, I just can't sell a card on Facebook. Well, what are you doing?
Right.
The thing about it is that, we've been trading and selling and buying long enough that we know who those people are. Oh, it's a Reds card. We want to tag this guy. Or, hey, it's a Ripken card. Go tag Edwin. Right. And a lot of these groups have these, hey, what do you collect lists? Go down that list and look and see who's collecting that. Go tag them. Reach out to them. Maybe do a search in the group and find out who bought into, those last cards or who showed interest in those and tag those folks. So put a little bit of effort into it. You're going to make out on it. But if it doesn't go there, then there are some other, groups that, that we sometimes participate in. They're the RAS groups. RAS groups are a good way to put together player or team lots and get that interest because, somebody may be interested in your rare card, but they're not looking to pay full value for it. So let's say the cards, whatever you valued the card at, it's like $75. Well, I'm interested in it, but $75 is kind of steep for me to get into that card. Whereas in a Raz group, somebody could drop down some money on it and possibly get the card for a fraction of the price. And you know, if you can group it by players or teams, or you know, even just certain high-end cards, that's a great way to unload a card, is look for a good Raz group, you know, from that standpoint. And if all else fails on the free markets, I do move on to, you know, Craigslist, eBay, you know, whatever the case may be, some of those other locations as well.
I think for the card that Wayne mentioned, the 1 out of 5, Trace Lore, I don't know that I would necessarily put that in a Raz. And the reason that I say that is because it's not a big name player.
Yeah.
It's not on a big name team, but it is an awesome card. But it's not autographed. And it's, well, wait, is it autographed?
It's 1 of 5.
It says Bowman Chrome, so I'm going to assume it's autographed.
Yeah.
For autographed Bowman Chrome, people want them graded for the most part. They want to see that BGS, shiny BGS gold 9.5, or maybe that black label 10 on there. So if I was just, because I didn't want it and I didn't like it and I wasn't going to invest any more money into it, I would throw it on eBay. And the reason I say that is I would just put a ridiculous bin out there, you know, $100 OBO, and see what I get back. If you get $100 for it, God bless. If you get a bunch of lowball offers, oh well, just set your settings to automatically reject. I think cards like he just mentioned are the hardest ones to move. And I know I've had a lot of conversations with John about this. An idiot can move Willie Mays. It's not hard. And you were talking about Raz Group. You don't even necessarily have to price it right in a Raz Group. If the card is nice enough, you're going to get the buyers and you're going to fill that card. But to answer his question specifically, I think for something like that, I would, one, either send it in to get graded, because if it comes back to BGS 9.5, it's going to go up exponentially and you'll have no problem getting rid of it in a Raz. And if you don't want to, again, I would just go OBO bin on eBay. I tend to find that the Raz groups are best for what I said. I mean, even though you are only putting in a fraction of the money, you're also doing that continuously all day long. As you well know, I'm a big fan of razzing. That's pretty much how I get 97 to 98% of my cards.
Well, you know, for commons or some of the obscure cards for razzing, I'm more of a team lot, you know, type of person, air quotes. You know, so throw it up with like Eckersley or, you know, some other folks in there. I think, you know, you're going to get that buy-in possibly for that type of card. And that's kind of where I was getting at with the Razzes too. So I want to throw it out there. You know, think about, you know, okay, yes, I have this card, but let me grab a couple more of the same player or some other really cool, you know, names from the A's. And then you're going to find somebody that goes, hey, I just love the A's. You know, let me just go jump in on that. And I think that's a great way too.
I will step back on a few things. One thing that I would do is I would go on a page and I would type in Oakland A's on the search bar, and then it lets me see all the people that are looking for Oakland A's.
Yes.
And what they have available. So if I'm looking to trade it and maybe get something back that, man, I do this all the time. I will trade a card to someone else who will trade me something that I will then sell. Mm-hmm. Meaning I'll take 3 cards like the one that Wayne mentioned that aren't worth anything to me.
Great
and
point.
I'll trade them for Paul Goldschmidt. And I know that Paul Goldschmidt is going to fill in a Raz. Like he just is. Like that card is going to fill. So, you know, it's a lot of work, man. I think another thing we've discovered today, Edwin, is that you and I spend a lot of time doing this. I guess I'm assuming that my audience puts as much time into moving this as we do. If you don't have a lot of time, eBay's the way to go. If you do have time, but man, I really would search on Facebook who has what for trade and what they're looking for, because you'll see a lot of in search ofs. So in search of Oakland A's, in search of Bowman Chrome colors, whatever the case may be.
Let me throw out one other thing here. There's another cool tool out there. It's called Zistle. And I don't know if you guys have ever looked at that tool before. Zistle. It's a website where you can actually use it for inventorying your cards, but it has a built-in trade manager. And so there's a lot of trading going on, just like everything else, you know, different forums and whatever the case may be. It actually has a trade manager built in there. So you can look up that card and it will tell you who is looking for that card. And then
That's
you can
awesome.
go to their page and see what they have for trade. And then you can propose a trade through that page. So it's just another platform out there for trading. But, I get a lot of hits because I'll upload my inventory, or just say I have, each one of these cards to that site. And then it has my list of, like, when you go look at that card and say, all these people have this card and these are the people that want it. It's just trying to marry, both of those things together. So it's just another tool out there that you can message people through there. It has a built-in trade manager. It's a lot of cool stuff like that. You'd be surprised. There's somebody out there probably putting together, a Trace Lore rainbow and needs that card.
Yes, you're probably right. You're probably right. Yeah, that I really appreciate that question, Wayne. I know that wasn't a direct answer. We tried to answer it as best we could and give you some different routes. That Zistel that you mentioned, Edwin, is really interesting to me. I'm actually going to check that out when we're done here. So, because I don't do that. Well, I have my card page for trades that I put up, and I'm starting to find it's actually a pain in the ass. And I'll tell you why. Because what happens is someone will say, "Hey, do you have any Trace Lore?" And I'll be like, "Oh yeah, here, check out my page." And they go on my page and they're like, "I notice you have a Carl Yastrzemski rookie card." And I'm like, "I thought we were talking about this other card over here." So I don't know if that's really working out for me anymore, man. I think I might need to conceal those things, because people get fixated on the ones that I'm just showing you I have them. I kind of want to keep them.
The coolest thing I like about that platform is they have a built-in search. So you can do a search and it has filters. You can say 2015, Topps Tech, down to the set level or the subset level, and then you can search for those particular cards, or just a basic keyword search, just like you can do on eBay. And I think it's a cool platform that folks may find some interest in.
Sure. For sure, man. Well, those are some of the questions that were on our Facebook page, Sultans of Swap. Again, I appreciate the guys who liked it. And I know we really appreciate our 300 army of Twitter followers. I don't go on Twitter, man. I don't know. I'm not old, but I'm old. I just am. You're talking about Zistel and Twitter. I'm so glad you're here. It's totally not my thing. If you want to find me, I'm really easy to find on Facebook. I guess you'll find Edwin on Twitter. Again, John wasn't here today, and he was missed. And the reason I missed him the most is because he said the Kansas City won the World Series last year, and he was so wrong, and that was awesome. It completely made my day. For all you guys that were beating him up, thank you. I really appreciate it, man. Giving John Anthony a hard time is one of my favorite things. I love the guy, but God dang it, was he wrong. It was so awesome. But it does look like he's going to be right. Did you have you been watching all the games, Edwin?
Yeah, I've been sticking up with them, man. I was really impressed. Watching these games, it definitely held my attention. I saw some pretty cool stuff. So I've really have enjoyed watching them.
Yeah, I didn't make it last night.
Yeah, so I thought for sure you were going to talk some bat flips and things like that, but
dude, it was Halloween in my neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
My friends came over and brought Mexican food and tequila, and that was it. So that just wasn't. Well, I woke up and caught the highlights. And that's about as good as you could possibly do there. I think the Mets are cooked. Yeah. So Stuart, if you're checking this out, I'm sorry, dude. There's always next year. I mean, you got to believe it could still happen, but I don't think it's going to happen, man.
So I think we got a couple different, concepts for some shows coming up soon. But, I know I'm like you. I'd love to hear from the fans. What are you guys looking for? What are your questions? What do you guys have? Hit us up on Twitter or Facebook. As you can see here, we love answering these questions. There's some really great questions coming at us. Let us know what you want to hear.
So with that, man, we appreciate it, everybody. Thanks for checking us out. And John will be back with us next week. Had to take care of some stuff today. And actually, if I can sneak him on later, I might try and do that just so we can bust his chops.
See you later, everyone.
Easy, man. See ya.